India. Thank you very much, Anand, for joining us. I mean, most of the mutual funds, your peers, are all stationed in Mumbai. When did Franklin Templeton shift its center of gravity to Chennai, and why?
Franklin Templeton took over a Chennai-based mutual fund firm, Kothari Pioneer, in 2002. Kothari Pioneer started way back in '93 and built up a reasonable market share by that time in equities. Post takeover, Franklin Templeton allowed people to stay wherever they are comfortable with, and equity team continued to stay back in Chennai, and we have a strong 15-member equity team at this point of time, few fund managers, 10 plus analysts, and we continue to be in Chennai.
Okay. No, of course, Kothari Pioneer, for those of us who have tracked mutual funds, is one of those shining stars in the mutual fund firmament, a performance that probably has never been repeated by any other mutual fund. But what is the interest in mutual funds? Where does a large part of your money come from? Is Chennai a very big source of investments as well?
We have been traditionally very strong in the retail space. A lot of our investors have been with us for a very long period of time, small investors. Franklin Templeton also has a huge market share in the IFA space, independent financial advisors, who are very strong in mobilizing money from individuals and predominantly retail investors.
Is South a big base for Franklin Templeton?
South is a reasonably good base. We have a higher market share in South, especially Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh.
Okay. Well, this is quite clearly proving to be not just fundamentals but a liquidity-driven market, and the mutual fund money is now making the traditional FII investment look pale. No longer are the markets looking at yesterday's FII numbers and taking a call. They're looking at yesterday's DII numbers or looking at the monthly mutual fund numbers put out by AMFI. What's your call? Do you think that this trend will continue? What kind of mutual fund kitty are you looking at for your own company or for the industry?
I think the industry is staring at a very large pie, which is not well understood at this point of time. Indians, on an average, annually save anywhere between $50 to $70 billion in gold, $150 to $200 billion in real estate annually. Because
how much did you say in gold?
Anywhere between $50 to $70 billion
in gold, and $150 billion in real estate.
In real estate, because it's a $2 trillion economy, 25% savings rate, and more than 40 to 50% of that savings go into physical assets, which is predominantly real estate and gold. So if you decompose it, we do see a large amount of money flow into these physical assets. Now, we are not asking for a significant shift from these physical assets to the financial assets. But even if you assume 5 to 10% shift from these physical assets to financial assets, especially equity, I mean, it's other 50 is already going to the banking deposits. So you're only asking for 5 to 10% shift from real estate to gold, real estate and gold to equities. We are talking about $10 to $15 billion annually inflows into domestic mutual funds, equity funds. So we do see that shift happening. The reasons are pretty obvious. I think the returns that are generated from real estate and gold have significantly moderated, and people are realizing it. And we are essentially seeing that there is a rotation out of these physical assets to slightly equally riskier or equally probably more remunerative equity assets.
Okay. So you are looking at what, 15 trillion by say FY17?
10 to $15 billion annual flows, which is a pretty large number when we compare to the current AUM in the business, which is of the order of probably about $50 billion. So we are looking at a 20 to 25% kind of a growth rate, structural growth rate in the industry, and everybody will have their share within that.
Absolutely.
So whoever does well, I'm sure will garner more.
Sonia?
Okay. Anand, hi, good morning. This is Sonia from the Mumbai studio. You know, you interact with retail investors regularly, so I just wanted to ask you, where is the highest amount of interest in terms of, Is it in sectoral funds? Is it across the board in diversified funds? And what would you recommend at this point in time, considering that now from a top-down market, it's moved to become a very stock-specific, earning-specific market with completely contradictory moves even within sectors. So what would your own recommendation be to retail investors?
Till about 3 months back, we saw significant inflows in the mid and small cap segment of the market, and so the funds which were focusing on that space were getting copious and large inflows. And contrary, on the other side, we didn't have that much inflows into our large cap funds. So much so that if you look at industry as a category, where the large cap funds AUM today are less than the mid and small cap funds AUM. I mean, if you leave the diversified funds as a separate category.
Okay.
Now what we are telling investors is that now that there has been a lot of mean reversion trade that has played out in the valuations of the mid cap and small cap, and the discounts have generally gone down, we recommend investors to allocate a lot of the money towards the core segment, which is the diversified equity funds, which gives them equal play in all the sub-segments of the market, largely 60 to 70% in large cap and 20 to 30% in mid cap kind of exposure, which is a little more balanced approach to investing in stock market at this point of time. I think one of the things which investors are grappling with is how to take risks without kind of burning one's fingers, and to that extent I think this strategy would be a better strategy going forward.
Okay, so 60-70% to large caps and remainder to the mid cap and small cap space. Within that, a sector that you've had a very bullish view on is the banking space. Both in, I don't see too many PSU banks, but a lot of private sector banks is what you have in your top holding. What's the argument there? Is it just a growth story despite higher valuations, or do you think that because PSU banks continue to show deteriorating asset quality, there's nowhere else to go but private?
We have been structurally positive on the private sector bank for quite some time. If you look at the last 10 years, our portfolios, so one of the common things you would have seen is our structural overweight stance on the private sector banks. The reason is fairly easy to elucidate. They come from a very small market share. They are best in practices in terms of some of the banking sector practices. They've also managed to control the risks and grow their banks profitably. So we saw them gaining gradually the market share from the public sector banks, and therefore they are also growing at a faster pace than some of their peers, which kind of made us invest more in that segment. Having said that, the valuations of course have re-rated over a period of time, but valuations apart, the fundamentals of the banks are very important. In the financial space, it is very important to protect the equity of the bank and ensure that the equity is not eroded significantly, and there we see private sector banks do a better job. Having said that, we do see structurally some things change in the PSU banks. Government is making a lot of efforts, like appointment of CEOs, more independent boards.
When did you dip your feet in?
We are dipping in already as we speak, but we are waiting and watching. We want to see the data come out. We don't want to premise our investments based on too much of conjectures or thesis. We want them to translate in the form of number and then back it up with some serious money. So we are just waiting and watching, and maybe taking a very measured exposure.
When the earnings turn, you bet more.
Earnings, the practices, the the decision-making processes, etc. A lot of things have to change for them to structurally become become bullish.
Well, I must congratulate you on your choice of pharma stocks. I mean, almost any other MF holdings that I have analyzed would have Sun and Lupin, and your best bets are Dr. Reddy's and Torrent Pharma. You must be a rich man. What would be the percentage of contribution to pharma? Would you incrementally increase?
Currently, we have overall, on an overall portfolio basis, about 8% of our money is in the healthcare and pharma sector. This used to be slightly higher about a year back. thanks to the run-up in the healthcare stocks, we have pared some exposure there, but our core exposures to well-growing pharma companies continue to remain. And we do remain structurally positive on these names.
Okay.
There may be near-term challenges in some of the names,
Okay.
but I do see good opportunities to grow, both domestically as well as overseas in these names.
I have your sector allocation. This may not be the freshest, but the last available in the public space. It says banks and financial institutions 28.6, technology 11.6, autos 9.2, pharma 7.8, oil and gas 7, and engineering 5. Now, if you were to incrementally raise any of this, which would it be?
I think we would increase auto,
Okay.
and maybe a little bit of IT.
I thought you would say engineering, no?
We do see mixed trends there. If you go by the results that's
I mean,
happening.
so Cummins do very well.
So we have
BHEL was a disaster, but some people were pointing out that their quarter-on-quarter order growth has been better than it has been for the past several quarters. So will you increase from 5%?
We should increase from 5%, but we are more, rather than sectorally taking a call, we would look for investable opportunities, like let's say Cummins. You mentioned about that. We do have exposure to that company. They've done well despite challenging conditions, largely helped by its growth in export market. So companies which are geographically diversified, have good legs of growth, and capable of delivering positive surprises on the margin side, we would be willing to look at that.
No staples? I mean, even the mention is not there in the sector allocation. What about this much celebrated urban consumption theme, discretionary spending?
That's been a bit of a miss, I would say. We underestimated the potential for re-rating of the consumer staples in a low interest rate, globally low interest rate environment, where we have seen dramatic re-rating of these companies. We're also seeing some of these consumer staple companies benefit from weak commodity prices, and therefore, though the top line growth is a little bit moderate, the bottom line growth has been pretty healthy because of margin expansion. So we are trying to look for where the risk-return trade-offs are there better. But as things stand today, it does look like the valuations are trading at more than close to 2 standard deviation of the long-term averages, and it doesn't make sense to increase exposure dramatically at this point of time.
Tread with caution.
Yeah.
Sonia?
Okay, just one final question from my end. You know, you have a sectoral fund, the India Infotech Fund, which focuses only on IT companies. And that interests me because you have not just companies like Infosys that are doing very well these days, but also names like eClerx, FirstSource, etc. Is that one sectoral fund that one can, you know, sort of put money into without worrying about a lot of volatility?
IT sector, broadly speaking, offers reasonable value at growth, which is probably well known to the investors at this point of time. Specific to the fund, what we have tried to do is provide investors a little more flavor of IT by putting part of that money into our global technology fund, US technology fund called Franklin US Technology Fund, which kinds of gives them exposure to the most happening ideas which are there in the technology space globally. Being in India, we are constrained for choice in the sector because many of them are more or less similar, and therefore doesn't provide investors adequate diversity or exposure to certain newer and happening technologies all over the world. So we are in the process of rebalancing that and towards more global exposure, and hopefully in the future it should provide reasonable opportunities.
Oh yes, if all those startups in Chennai and Bangalore were to invade the stock markets, I guess you will have more choice.
Let's hope so.
Anand Radhakrishnan, it was a pleasure having you with us and hosting you inside Chennai in your city. Thank you very much for joining.
Thanks, Lata.